What's up, data transformers? This is Bolaji, and welcome to Data Career Transformations, the show where we watch analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists transform their career. Today, we're talking to a chemical engineer turned industrial engineer turned FinOps data engineer who went from optimizing physical warehouses with Excel to optimizing data warehouses with DBT. Man, he's a data and software guy focused on cloud analytics. He brings big expertise in BigQuery, DBT, GitHub Actions, Alteryx, Python, Grafana. But here's what you don't know about him. He's a volunteer soccer coach at Nutmeg, a soccer and social development program where he learned that 6-year-olds are both elite teammates and savage trash talkers. So we're going to talk a lot about soccer today. He grew up in Malaysia and Singapore where you can literally eat all day. My kind of places. We got to dig into that a little bit more. And his favorite travel ritual is visiting grocery stores to check out seasonal produce. What? By the way, best strawberries in the world, Japan. Please help me welcome from Toronto, Canada, senior staff data engineer at Kanaxis, Eddie Zulkifly. What up, Eddie?
That's amazing. That's an amazing introduction. Thank you so much for having me today. So stoked to do this today.
Oh my God, I've been looking forward to this one, dude. We've been trying to get this. First and foremost, you got to take me to Malaysia and Singapore. So I'm all about food. I'm a foodie. Where am I finding the best eats at the oddest hours?
Okay, that's a tough question. If you ask any other Malaysian, everybody has like different opinions. I come from Kuala Lumpur, and the best. So one of Malaysia's most famous dishes is nasi lemak. So it's a coconut rice with chicken, and there's a spicy sauce, anchovies, and peanuts. So the one where I go is a village park, which is close to my neighborhood in Taman Tun Dr. Ismail. It's pretty famous. A lot of members of government, and I think a lot of very popular celebrities go there as well. So whenever I come back to Malaysia and visit my family, it's always there. Whenever I go to Singapore, visit my family is from, it's called the neighborhood is called Geylang Serai, and my family has been living there for basically generations. We usually go to like the hawker center nearby, and it's such great food. It's amazing prices. You can get amazingly good food. For example, you can get chicken rice, you can get a roti canai, which is a flaky flatbread pancake that you eat with with curry, and that will probably cost you under $10. So it's a great place to eat.
Michelin star chicken rice.
Yeah. So that's a thing in Singapore. Singapore's food culture is like pretty interesting. Like you can go find Michelin star quality food at a hawker center, and that's under $10. But the lines will be extremely long, so you gotta do the trade-off there.
Wow. I've had the opportunity to visit Singapore once, many years ago. I traveled for work. I've never been to Malaysia, but I'm planning to take the family to Asia, and perhaps it sounds like Kuala Lumpur needs to be one of our stops.
Oh, you definitely enjoy Bolaji. It's an insane city. Like it's crazy. The metro is amazing, so you'll definitely be able to travel to many parts of the city. It's a great place to visit.
Wow. So you grew up in Malaysia and Singapore. You're coaching kids now in soccer in Toronto, Canada. Where did the soccer or football, where did that come into the picture? Did you play as a kid?
Well, yeah, in this case, I think I really gravitated towards soccer and football just because my brother and I, we used to play Winning 11 or FIFA on the PlayStation. And that's how I got started with playing soccer. Eventually that transitioned to playing outside with friends. And I think the biggest difference was probably during the pandemic. I think, I don't know if you've watched the show Ted Lasso, but I think that was the ultimate inspiration for me because I see how awesome it is to become a coach. Nutmeg, which is Toronto's, it's after school kids and soccer development program. I just decided to just try my luck and see if I would love coaching kids. And so far it's been a blast. I really learned a lot from the kids.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is incredible. I love that, Eddie. I've had the opportunity to coach kids as well for about 6 or 7 years. It's a joy, man. It's a joy just to see, like, especially after you've had a hard day at work and then you get to run around with kids and you get to put all your grown-up problems aside for a little bit. So I love that you're doing that. I do have to ask, what's your favorite soccer team today? So I can know whether or not we can continue this conversation or not, Eddie.
Oh, okay. We're in dangerous territory, Bolaji, but okay, don't judge me. I'm a Chelsea fan, but I'm also really into.
So well.
but side note. So I know, given how I guess Chelsea is doing on the men's side, I've actually been really into women's soccer. I think it was interesting that
Okay.
I never really looked at women's soccer as much, but I think once I play Ultimate Team like on FIFA quite a bit, and they introduced kind of like the women's game as well, and it was actually so interesting.
Mm.
So I've been learning a little bit more about women's soccer, and the stories that are there are very much similar to kind of like what you see in the men's game. So you have like Emma Hayes, who's basically like the
Oh,
female version of Sir Alex Ferguson. Like she's won it
yeah,
all. She's
she's
now the
great.
the U.S. women's national team coach, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
have like stories of like some really awesome players. So you have Sam Kerr. When Chelsea signed
Mm-hmm.
her, she's effectively like Australian Messi. So
Yes.
it's kind of
Yes.
cool in that perspective. And one of the things I'm doing this year is honestly getting Champions League tickets is such a chore because you have to go through the lottery. But it's awesome that now there's the women's Champions League, right? So I was able to get tickets to watch the final in Lisbon this year. So,
Fantastic.
so I'm so stoked to see that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is
Yeah.
incredible. The World Cup, as you know, is coming to North America very soon. So I'm really excited about that as well. Hopefully that will create a new generation of soccer fans here in North America. But this is great. We could talk soccer all day, but we need to talk some data engineering. So I'm really fascinated with your origin story, Eddie. We don't get chemical engineers on the show very often. You are definitely the first industrial engineer we've had on the show. And this juxtaposition of physical warehouses and data warehouses, I've never thought of before, where you actually connect the dots. So first, let's start with the industrial engineering thing. What made you actually pivot from chemical engineering early in your schooling to industrial?
Yeah, that's a great question actually, because I ran into this dilemma just even like when I was choosing kind of what engineering degree I wanted to pursue. Initially, I think I was
Mm,
focused on chemical engineering, potentially at the time, just because I think Malaysia also has like an oil company called Petronas, and I think there's probably like you could make a career in oil and gas. So that
right.
pushed me to take in the chemical engineering side. But I think what made
Mm,
the difference and what made it comfortable for me to switch to industrial engineering was the knowledge that I think after high school, I did realize like the things I really liked doing. Like after high school, I was fortunate enough to have a library, and I just went reading and I tried to explore like the
mm,
different things that you could learn. So psychology was something that I really wanted to explore. And
mm,
I realized from high school, I think I was pretty good at math. So I realized that
mm.
industrial engineering is that sweet spot between math, psychology, and a little bit of engineering. What I liked
Wow.
about my university degree at the University of Toronto was
Yeah.
when you take industrial engineering, you're exposed to psychology, and in this case, it's psychology in relation to designing apps and systems. So I have some background in UX design. Along the
Okay.
way, you also learn about data analysis, statistics, and we're also a big operations research school. So a lot of the
Mm,
things that we do are also tied back to mathematical modeling, which really is implemented quite a lot in supply chain. For example, you have like you're
mm-hmm.
solving like different types of mathematical problems. For example, the integer knapsack that can also be applied in like supply chain. Let's say, for example, it's like how do you fit as many boxes inside a truck because you want to maximize trailer utilization. So a lot of the
Mm.
things that we do in supply chain very much ties in with what I learned in industrial engineering.
So what you're telling me, Eddie, is that all the years I played Tetris as a kid were not wasted. I could have just gone into supply chain
Yep,
management.
absolutely. I think there was a time when we were working at the warehouse, and I think
Yes.
some of the people there were probably the best Tetris players because you would have stuff coming from the sorter, and then you would basically build pallets, and then at the end you
Yes.
would tie them up. So there was competition going on where people would
My
basically just figure out
gosh.
how would you stack them up together. But
That's
yeah.
wild. That's wild. That's wild. And you ended up working at a company that a lot of us in North America, at least, will be familiar with. It wasn't the first company you worked at. You worked at Home Depot. And I imagine that this was a really rich and fertile ground for you to grow your supply chain management skills.
Yeah, exactly. So like my time at Home Depot was pretty awesome. I guess the way how I would describe my career is I worked my way from being like a supply chain analyst and then
Mm,
going deeper into the technical weeds.
hmm,
And I found it was pretty awesome within Home Depot that I was able to explore the different facets of the business. I touched supply chain data, I touched e-commerce data, I touched marketing data. So that gave me a really good sense of how do we use data to make decisions and how stakeholders think about leveraging their data. So that gave me a lot of context and understanding business problems. And once you understand the business problems, it's easier to go on the data layer and figure out, okay, if this is the problem, how do I finagle my data to help me answer that question?
Wow, I love that. I love that. I got a bone to pick with you though, Eddie, because you've talked about working with Excel spreadsheets a lot during that phase of your career. And you had this quote that sticks with me. You said Excel is still the universal data language for business. Is that really true? Are we never going to get beyond Microsoft Excel, Eddie?
Yeah, I think at this point it is the de facto business tool that I think it's been like
Jeez.
30, 40 years. And I think it's really telling when, let's say, for example, you build a really nice Power BI, Grafana, any sort of dashboard, and most stakeholders, the first question top of mind is, how do I export this to Excel? So that question will always be there. And rather than having a conversation, I will just build my dashboards to have an export button and just kick that out.
Oh, wow. See, this is going back to your psychology roots, your industrial engineering roots. You're working with the users. I love that. I actually heard an analogy once that if there's ever an apocalypse, there's three things that are going to survive. Cockroaches are going to survive. Twinkies, don't ask me why, Twinkies, and Excel spreadsheets. Like these things just don't die.
That is kind of like a business artifact that will stay. Maybe in the next 100 years, Bolaji, there will probably be probably a museum of like Excel spreadsheets that all of us have made. Maybe you can share a spreadsheet that your children's children will look into.
Oh my gosh, that is frightening. That is frightening. Okay, so that was a little rabbit hole with the Excel thing, but you did pick up some other technologies along the way. Tableau, Alteryx. You learned Tableau from YouTube, Eddie?
Exactly. And I guess the backstory behind that was, in this case, we did have Tableau in our company, and I just wanted to get more experience just in terms of building visualizations. And at the time, like, I kind of had like an accountability group, and I think at the time my goal was I just wanted to learn how to make visualizations in Tableau. And I went online and found the community. There's a group on Tableau called Andy Cribble, and I think her name was Eva Murray, but they have something called like Makeover Mondays, where you are given a free data set and you basically figure out how to tell a story. So I remember that was how I started moving up the data ladder in this case. So from Excel, the next level was just working with a visualization tool such as Tableau. And I learned to work with simple data sets, figured out what story I wanted to tell, and I made dashboards. And that was just how I got into Tableau pretty much.
This is fascinating, Eddie. You seem like a pretty self-motivated person. You've taught yourself a lot of skills along the way. It's interesting though that it seems you migrated from doing more of the analyst side of the profession now to being a full-blown data engineer.
Yeah. And I think that comes to the realization that I think what I'm probably trying to do is I'd like to understand all the different aspects of working with data. And working on the analyst side is important because you want to understand the business question, or how do you translate the business requirements into something that a data team can manage. And now for me, the way how I'm treating it is I kind of want to go into the depths of data a little bit more, just because I want to understand how do you build data pipelines, how do you build models that answer business questions. But the overarching picture down the line is, once I have enough of that skill, I can now at least effectively manage my own like data processes. I can figure out how do we translate a lot of these vague business requirements into technical specs that the team can use and drive value as a data team. Because the one thing that I have noticed throughout my career is, depending on the environment you're in, sometimes working in data can be a little bit tricky because it could be a lot of silos. The requirements aren't really clear. So we try, in this case, my hope is one day when I become like a data leader, I can help drive my team so that I can give them enough direction so that they can build data pipelines, data warehouses, and dashboards that help drive business questions.
Ooh, I love the vision. I love the vision. I'm going to want to talk in depth about the work you're actually doing now. Thank you for walking us through sort of how you got here. You're doing a lot of data sets and dashboards for the FinOps team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to actually learn more about that. But I'd love to hear, Eddie, how you feel your personality, your mindset maybe suits being a data engineer more so than a data scientist or analyst. Why is data engineering a sweet spot for Eddie?
In this case, for me, the sweet spot of data engineering is it's a very, in my opinion, I find data engineering pretty structured because in this case, what you're trying to do is very much moving data from A to B. The hard
Yes.
part is knowing what you want to bring in your data pipelines from A to B. And that's kind of where you need to be able to talk to the business to understand what their goals are, what their requirements are. And if as a data engineer, if I can understand what the final intent is, that gives me a lot of insight into how I would model my data, how I would ingest my data into building really good data sets to answer the business questions.
Gotcha.
And another thing that I also enjoy about the data engineering piece, it's also the builder aspect. I think it's pretty awesome nowadays that there's so many data companies, for example, like DBT. There's also a bunch of other open source ones like Data Load Tool that basically give you these abstractions that let you build like high quality data pipelines, and you don't have to, in this case, go too much into the weeds of like programming. In this case, you are given abstractions that can help you build pipelines and help you address some of the common challenges of working with data pipelines.
Right.
So in this case, being a builder is a key characteristic, and also understanding what the business use case is and then translating that into data requirements. I think that probably lends me to at least understanding how do I become a really good data engineer for that.
Yes. So I want to get some insight into how your team is set up at Kanaxis, but let's give people some context first. So what does Kanaxis do? What's their business?
Yeah, so in this case, Kinaxis is a supply chain SaaS platform. And the context behind this is we basically create software that help companies stay agile and resilient when supply chains get messy and complex. So our flagship platform is called Maestro. So think of it as if you're like a big supply chain retailer, you feed in all our data, all your data into our platform. We have tools that transform it, and then once we transform the data and feed it into our platform, it helps you automate some of the complex supply chain tasks. An example of this would be I'll share a story that I've had at Home Depot. When I was working at the distribution center, one of my responsibilities as an operations analyst was figuring out how many shipments of containers are we receiving next week. That piece of information is valuable because that determines how much labor we need to staff at the warehouse, how many orders that need to be fulfilled that week, and how do we plan the store deliveries. You have constraints like, not everybody can, let's say, drive a forklift, and there's not even enough forklifts. So you need to have some sort of way to production plan, or basically create plans that make sense for your staff to be able to send orders to the store. And with my Maestro, all that context is brought together, and it can basically create those production plans, and it gives the analysts the time to just focus on execution and figuring out how to continuously improve. So it basically is that second brain for supply chain.
That is very cool. I remember studying a lot of supply chain stuff when I was in business school. I never actually worked in the field or in the industry, but I always found it really interesting. Retail space and warehouse space, it seems like it could get really complicated really quickly. So having said that, you are supporting the FinOps department. How is the data team set up there?
Yeah. So in this case, the way how our team is set up right now is, and I think the overall vision for our team is, the goal is we're really trying to align with DBT's analytics development lifecycle. I think that's a really awesome framework to work with. And in this case, that the ADLC is very similar to DevOps or software engineering lifecycles. Ideally, what we want to try and do is we want to give our data team the autonomy to work across all layers of the data lifecycle, from ingestion to modeling to visualization. So we want to intentionally design this team to break down silos internally between the teams, and we want to foster alignment, because I've seen what happens when, I guess, all of that is separated and siloed out, that it makes the process a lot longer than it has to be. So in this case, that's the vision of how our data team works. Initially, on the people side of things, we have something like a pod structure. So within our data teams, we have two different groups or two different pods. You have a data architect on both, you have a couple of data engineers, you have a couple of data analysts, and you also have like specialized roles such as a FinOps analyst and also a data governance person to also oversee kind of like our data team being built out. So that's kind of like the rough idea of kind of like how our data team is kind of like set up. We have in this case like our team, so our data team is broken up into kind of like smaller sub teams. So you have like a decision intelligence team, which is very much your BI team. You have a data engineering data platform team that focus on building automation pipelines and infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah, and lastly, to what I mentioned before, the specialists. In this case, these are your data governance folks who've worked in the space to understand what are the really important aspects of governance that we need to bring into the data team. And on the FinOps side, looking at all our application telemetry and our cloud spend, how do we optimize spend in the cloud?
Wow. You've gone from optimizing physical spaces, maybe even before that, optimizing Tetris spaces, to physical warehouse spaces, and now optimizing spend in the cloud. I would love to dig into this. Space is fairly new to me, so I'm going to ask a lot of newbie questions. I'd love to dig into maybe some of the technical challenges that you might have faced. Like, what are some really difficult technical problems you've faced, Eddie, and how have you approached thinking through those challenges?
So I guess in terms of the FinOps piece, in this case, so I guess I'll probably give some context into what FinOps is. Essentially, we're just using data to make smarter decisions in the cloud. The best way that I can explain it to like kids or a 5-year-old is that like if you've ever gone to like a dollar store or a Dollarama in Canada, you'd probably go to the toilet paper section and you'd look at like all the different toilet papers that are on offer. And in this case, like my wife and I do is we kind of do the math to see how much is the what is the price per
ply
per roll, right? The price per roll, right? So just figuring out kind of what is the unit costs of a specific resource or a product. That's essentially what FinOps is. You try to optimize based on that. And I think right now some of the challenges that we're working on, at least in the FinOps spaces, one is because a lot of products or a lot of applications are now containerized. One really interesting question that a lot of FinOps people are figuring out is how do you figure out the price? How do you figure out the price of a customer's job that are in different Docker containers? You kind of have to go into the weeds of like how a Docker container runs, how much resources it's using, and then once you know that, how do you tag it to the right customer, to the right job? So I think it's a lot of questions on tagging. I guess the broader business issues is how do you implement tagging policies within the organization? So one important aspect of FinOps is cost allocation. So this I guess ties in with also like software engineering. Like whenever a person deploys resources, who is the owner? What is it for? And all that is really important because at the end of the day, you're given like one bill and you need to figure out which team is responsible for that costs. The idea is once you cost allocate accordingly, then you make teams accountable for their spend. As FinOps engineers, you try to leverage what you know about cloud, about software design, software architecture to figure out how would you optimize it. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Really interesting. Really interesting. It makes me think of tracking things like cost of goods sold and maybe the challenge of figuring out how to track fixed costs or how to allocate fixed costs versus variable costs to each unit that you're selling. It doesn't seem like a simple or trivial problem to answer.
You're right. And that's also another part of FinOps is also figuring out like unit economics. So to what you mentioned, the cost of goods sold, you have your fixed and variable costs. So FinOps has the same notion as well. So depending on your platform, you might have different types of metrics. So we've been listening into a bunch of different FinOps teams, and depending on how platforms. So for example, if you're Uber, what is the cost of, let's say, like one Uber ride? So in this case, it's kind of interesting that FinOps is general, but depending on kind of like what space you're at, you kind of run into some really interesting problems.
Yes. Really cool. And so either in your current FinOps job, which you've been doing for maybe 3 years or thereabouts.
Been about 2 years now, yeah.
Couple of years, or even in the Home Depot space, have there been technical problems that you've run into that really had you stumped? And if so, how might we learn from some of those struggles that you had?
Yeah, for sure. I actually one really interesting story that I'd like to share is in regards to like my time at Home Depot. So during my time while I was a data engineer there. So the context, Bolaji, is think of the pandemic. So this is
Yes.
like 2020. So if you recall, kind of like the mania of people going to stores and buying a lot of toilet
That's
paper,
right.
right? Yeah. So
Not that I would know
effectively,
anything about that. I still have pandemic toilet paper in my garage, but we're not talking about me right now.
yeah. So the pandemic toilet paper shortage, and what we noticed, what was happening online was pretty interesting at the time. I think the most popular searches in Home Depot was a bidet. So do you know what a bidet is? Just curious.
Wow, yes. For the benefit of the audience, would you
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, so a bidet is basically like if you don't have toilet paper, a bidet is just like a hose that you attach next to your toilet, and you can basically use it to wash. It's very common in Asia generally. So the story behind that was I had a friend, he wanted to buy a bidet at the Home Depot. He went to the closest store and it was stocked out. Although it was stocked out, he was still determined. So he drove to another Home Depot nearby and he bought
Mm-hmm.
his bidet there. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I was working towards was to support like our data science team. We wanted to basically personalize we wanted to personalize emails for customers depending on their closest store. Let's assume in that email that there was an item that was out of stock for their preferred store. I know
Yes.
that from the customer side, just because something is out of stock doesn't mean that they'll stop. They'll probably figure out kind of like the next closest store, right? So what I had to build, at least in terms of the data modeling piece, is how do you build an algorithm that would not just consider the person's closest store, but like
Right.
the broader, like the next three closest stores, and basically
Okay.
use the inventory from all three of those stores.
Okay.
And
Okay.
based on that, at least you wouldn't discount a product just because it was out of stock from that one person's preferred store. So that was the vision. And we implemented that. And then down the line, what I realized was because the logic makes sense from like a customer perspective, but when you want to explain it to the business, sometimes because it's a bit too complex, you kind of have to at least showcase and explain the value of it. Going back to the time when I did all of this, I would have probably done the math to explain kind of like what is the risk and then what is the reward, and basically just communicate the value of implementing this. And that would be like a big lesson that I've learned, at least from my time at Home Depot there.
Right. Right. Wow. So did your friend ever get the bidet in the end?
Oh, yeah. He did. He told me. Yeah.
We're all collectively very happy for him. That is a fascinating story and probably very relatable because we all dealt with the pandemic toilet paper issues, among other shortages. Very, very interesting. I love to ask Eddie of my data friends this question. Tell me about a project that you're proud of. What pops into mind for you when you hear that question?
So definitely like something I'm really proud of. I'm still proud of to this day is definitely like just my time at Kanaxis right now. So when I joined the team, Emil, the hiring manager that hired me, gave me the vision that I was able to paint my own Picasso. And in this case, like that was when like suddenly the light bulbs popped in. I was really happy that I was able to implement the modern data stack in our team. So in this case, that's where all the things that I've learned from DBT, from learning from friends, learning from folks at the Home Depot, I was able to basically leverage all of that and set it up for our team. And then once you have DBT and you know how to use it, it doesn't actually end there. There's also now I kind of like jumped into the rabbit hole of software engineering, and now I'm implementing data ops. I'm implementing continuous integration, continuous deployment for my team, understanding how to set that up in GitHub Actions, figuring out how do we support our developers in reducing the likelihood of code errors. So that's where you have things like pre-commits. Another challenge that most data teams have is how do you onboard folks on day one. And before it was pretty manual, and through conversations, learning from other software engineers, I've learned about something called development containers that basically is pre-configured templates that you can load up into your VS Code. So basically developers can be productive day one. You can even set up code spaces on GitHub where people can just, if they say, for example, if you have an analyst that has never gone the DBT path, you can set up a code space that replicates the DBT environment, and you can just teach them the basics. And then once they feel comfortable enough, you can move them into kind of like a more proper development environment. So in this case, it was really interesting just because the DBT was that rabbit hole that led me to explore and learn about all these different software engineering principles. And ever since, I've just been slowly expanding and building upon that.
Man, that's exciting, man. You landed in a good spot, but I mean, you earned your way into that spot. All the things that you brought in from Home Depot, from your industrial engineering background, I feel like those have made you a very unique. They've given you a unique perspective that you're bringing to data engineering and software engineering now. I should ask, who are maybe some key mentors or influences that have actually helped you along your journey, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, for sure. So in this case, definitely want to shout out a couple of the folks through my journey. So in this case, like in my time at Home Depot, there was this person. His name is Brent Brewington. So I met him through the Georgia Tech program because he was also doing the master's with me as well. He demoed DBT to our team, and I saw what he did internally for his team. And once I just saw what he was doing and what he was implementing, I just knew I kind of wanted to get deep into it. So that exposure, I think, was really important because it helped me realize the opportunity of like software engineering in the data space, and I went all in to explore that. The other one I would also call out is Emil Shaiban, like my current manager at Kanaxis. He gave me the trust and the confidence to take on like the most impactful projects. We were able to migrate cloud cost platform Cloudability into more of a open source and cloud native platform using DBT, BigQuery, GitHub Actions. The level of support and trust really made a huge difference because he gave me the chance to learn, explore. If I made a mistake, I could he gave me the opportunity to correct everything. So I think having a supportive manager is really important. And just while we're here, I also want to give a big shout out to Kanaxis team in general. I feel blessed to work with such really talented architects, engineers. I learn a lot of things from everyone. The most awesome thing I found was when I was at the office in Ottawa, I could walk up one flight of stairs and have a casual conversation with one of the product managers about how we're implementing AI or machine learning for our customers. That's great. The technical level is actually pretty awesome. And I find it so interesting because everybody in Kanaxis is a data team, but we all do it differently. So it's really awesome to hear the different perspectives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And the last one here, and I do want to make a call out, would be like to Lindsay Murphy. So Lindsay runs a podcast called Women Lead Data. Highly recommend for all the folks here to listen in. But one thing she also did was she hosted the Toronto Modern Data Stack meetup. I've lived in Toronto for 10 years, and honestly, I wish I found the community sooner. The first time it felt like I found my people because everybody was talking about DBT SQL data modeling. Everyone was working through the same kind of problems and challenges in the analytics space. And over time, because it was the same group, I made a lot of really great friends. And I guess this speaks to the value of like open source and the community that it creates. So once you kind of like have like all these people that are kind of like going through the same problems, you have a lot of different perspectives, and you also learn a lot from other people too. So I think that's been like tremendous for my growth and for my development as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. All great shares. I've seen Lindsay's work, been hearing about her for quite a while. I haven't gotten to chat with her yet. Lindsay, well done. Brent is a great friend from the DBT community. We're going to have him on the show very soon. And man, yeah. Brent's a big contributor in the community, so we love Brent. And Emil, it sounds like, has just created what a wonderful environment for career growth and contribution. So I'm so excited. It's always heartwarming when we hear of people who have found a good spot. They're able to really bring their best selves to work, and you see them flourishing. So I'm really happy as to where you've landed and what you're doing there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bolaji. Yeah, but it's been a crazy journey. I'm impressed. Like I'm shocked, to be honest, because I'd imagine like 4 years ago, if you asked me to touch a command line, I would be terrified. And now it's like suddenly there's like a request from the business, like they want access somewhere, and now because of all of the things that I've learned, I can go to like my platform engineering's code base, figure out what exactly I need to change, and I put a pull request. So the technical growth is just insane.
Let's go. I have to ask. Okay, so I learned about this concept years ago. This is going to tie soccer or football to psychology to data. I promise. We're going to connect the dots, folks. But I learned about this concept years ago called the growth mindset, fixed versus growth mindset. A fixed mindset is, for those who may not be familiar, fixed mindset being having the mindset that whatever skills or abilities you currently have and bring to the table, that's it. That's what you have. That's what you got. So if you're already at the top of the mountain, at the top of the scale, good for you. You'll always be at the top. And if you're at the bottom, well, sorry for you. You're never going to climb up that mountain. That's very different. That's contrasted with a growth mindset, which says no matter what skills or abilities you currently have, you are able to increase those. I will say I was an academic book smart kid growing up. And I think a lot of book smart kids are plagued with this. They're plagued with a fixed mindset because, at least in school, they see themselves at the top of the mountain. They're king or queen of the hill. And they don't necessarily start to develop the grit or the muscle to practice things they're not good at. Your story, Eddie, very much reflects a growth mindset. And the fact that you're coaching kids in soccer right now, I wonder if you could connect the dots for us. Like, not every 6-year-old that comes to you is going to be, a young Lionel Messi. Not everyone is just going to be like gifted or athletically, like all that. How do you help people who don't start as rock stars on day one? How do you help them slowly build that muscle to add skills?
That's a really good question, Bolaji. So thinking through how do we coach people, right? And I guess my experience, especially working with kids, right? You have to go to their level, right? So I think as a part of kind of like my experience at Nutmeg, we do get quite a lot of training in terms of coaching and working with kids. There's a lot of interesting things, especially like the nuances between like coaching women against coaching boys. Both are a little bit different, right? So at least what I've learned, at least from coaching like young girls these days, they need to feel accepted. So you need to kind of like make sure that you always welcome them. You have to always kind of like speak to their level and also kind of like always keep a positive mindset. One thing I've noticed, especially with some of the kids, it's like, when you ever see the kid that's kind of like messy and she could be dribbling around everybody, right?
Yes.
And yes. she's insanely good. But at the same time, yes, it's because she's extremely good. You kind of have to challenge her a little bit more. Let's say, for example, okay, you're insanely good with your right foot. Let's use your left foot now, right? So you try to change that. And then you also see some girls that are a little bit timid that kind of require a little bit of coaxing just to get them to feel more comfortable, right? So you kind of want to bring them in. You call them by their name. You make the environment more exciting or make it more welcoming. So I guess the strategy should be always to tailor your strategy to the person. So figuring out what they care about and then using that as how you can draw them in to get them to try something different. The goal is for them to not, the goal isn't to get them to perfection, but the goal is to get them to try and keep trying, right? So you want to make sure that there's always, you want to just keep encouraging them so that they keep trying. And I guess this aligns well with also just like working with other professionals as well, the people who, say, for example, don't have the data engineering experience. And I always get a lot of advice. It's like, how do you get started, right? And in this case, I think the most impactful thing for me was just having a group of people that were also kind of like going through the same things, having like an accountability group, just having somebody to just share kind of like your experiences and how you'd handle them. Because I think that creates kind of like that positive loop that it's okay if it's not perfect the first time, but over time, as long as you keep putting the work, things will gradually compound and grow from there, right?
No, that's really good. That's really powerful. I think it's so relevant for people who are in the middle of their career right now, of their data career, particularly as the ground is shifting underneath us. So whether you've been a data professional for 2 years or for 20 years, we're all about to be in this space where we have to have a growth mindset because the technologies are changing. Artificial intelligence is going to start to do a lot of the work that we used to do. We're going to have to adapt and build those new skills. And so that's why I'm particularly excited about the environment that Emil has created at your company, and that I know other data professionals or data leaders listening to this show are creating for their data teams. I should ask you, Eddie, if we look forward a little bit, I'm curious about your aspirations now. You're in a really good spot, but if we were to look forward like 2 to 5 years, what kind of work do you see yourself doing? What kind of projects? What excites you?
That's a great question, Bolaji. I think for me right now, timeline, at least in 5 years, I would say is a bit of the long-term goal. So I guess if I were to look at it in the first 1 or 2 years, I'm kind of like rounding out my technical expertise. I kind of want to get into the weeds of data architecture and platform engineering. And right now, I'm kind of like working through that. But at the same time, I'm also actively working on my leadership. by mentoring and coaching other engineers, which has been incredibly rewarding. I would see myself maybe like 5 years down the line. I know for a fact I will probably still be working in data. It could be analytics, it could be machine learning or applied AI. To me, data is still data. But in the future, in the next 5 years, I would love to be able to be in a position that I can build a data product or lead a data team, because I think that probably aligns well with a lot of the technical work that I've been doing. And with kind of like my experience working close to kind of like the business, I would love to be able to, in this case, I'd like to think of myself as the role that can translate a lot of vague business requirements into something that's technically doable from the data team. I do see that as an opportunity for a lot of data folks. Like if they can master or translate a lot of that business context into data problems, then that really helps speed up kind of like the time to value for a data team. So those are the things that I kind of want to look at and kind of like get really good at as well.
Gotcha. This is great. Man, this has been fun. We've been talking to Eddie Zulkifly, the FinOps data expert extraordinaire, coming from the supply chain world and now doing it in cloud warehouses for Kanaxis. Very exciting. That's my alarm. That's telling me I need to let Eddie go. We gotta close with one more question though. Eddie, could you give some encouragement, some advice to data professionals who are either early in their career or maybe stuck in a bit of a rut and they're trying to figure out how to break through to the next level? What are some things you might advise people to do who are trying to get to that next level in their data career?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I guess that's a bit of a misconception is like the people that are working in data. Like in this case, I've been in data for like 10 years, and I feel like now that I've learned a lot, I feel ready to share these things. But now that I'm learning, you don't necessarily have to wait 10 years to be able to share what you're learning. One thing that I found really valuable is that, what's it called? There's this concept of learning in public. So one of the things that I quite liked about what Data Talks Club was doing is they actively encourage people to share their learning in social media, in platforms, because I think when you put yourself in that position of sharing stuff, you have a little bit of a different mindset. Rather than just kind of like consuming content passively, you now are in a position where you're looking at the content and you're actively thinking about what you're trying to share. And that actually helps speeds up learning, right? So the advice I would give is don't wait 10 years to share your story. One. Two is learning in public is really scary, but if you do it enough, eventually it compounds. The third one I would say is like really finding people to learn from. I'm fortunate that I live in Toronto, which is a big tech city in Canada, that I could find a meetup maybe in the next 1 or 2 weeks where you have people from the AI space talking about the latest developments in AI, machine learning. We also have data meetups. So kind of like going to all these different groups and meetups, learning from other people is definitely also a really important component to kind of like accelerating your growth and learning too.
You heard it here, folks. I mean, he just gave the whole blueprint right there. Rewind that last 2 minutes and play it again. We've been talking to Eddie Zulkifly, the senior staff data engineer at Kanaxis, youth soccer coach at Nutmeg, board game aficionado, strawberry expert apparently, and the Ted Lasso of data. This has been a great pleasure. Eddie, thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Bolaji, for your time today. Loved it.
All right, folks, definitely check Eddie out wherever he's speaking. Eddie, this has been fun. Eddie, we got to do it again sometime really soon. And by the way, I'm an Arsenal fan, so...
Hey, it's okay. I'm proud. No worries, Bolaji. I have no regrets that Rice is killing it. Like, I saw those 2 goals against Madrid.
OMG.
He's a Chelsea lad, so it's okay. Thank you.
Fair enough. We can jointly celebrate that, folks. All right, folks, this has been Data Career Transformations. Thank you for hanging out. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
Awesome. Thank you, Bolaji.
This show is brought to you by DBT. DBT is the industry standard for data transformation. It allows your team to prepare data for analysis in a way that's centralized, modular, and entirely open, all inside your cloud data platform. The outcome? Consistently dependable analytics for your organization. Now, the DBT community was built for and by data pros Come hang out and transform with 70,000 of the brightest analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists in the world. With DBT, you transform your data. With the DBT community, you transform your data career.